Love staying informed? Subscribe now and get unlimited access to local news, weather, and sports for just 99 cents a month for your first 3 months at inforum.news/join. Read every story, listen to every podcast, and download the apps that keep you informed and on the go 24 hours a day. So head to inforum.news/join right now to subscribe. What are you waiting for? Get 3 months of local news for just 99 cents a month at inforum.news/join.
Welcome to Plain Talk, and I want to start with a I don't know what I want to call it, because I spend a lot of time writing about this stuff, and sometimes I need somebody outside of myself to tell me, am I going crazy? Am I focusing on something too much? Am I making too big a deal out of this? And listen, I've been pretty tough on Governor Doug Burgum's campaign. And by the way, welcome Ben Hansen, my co-host today. We're not going to have a guest on today. Surprisingly, coming up on the holidays, it's getting kind of hard to book people. A lot of people take time off and stuff. So
turns out,
yeah.
December's going to get even more.
The holidays.
We'll
the holidays.
The
Listen, I have hosted a daily radio show through the holidays many times, and I will tell you, it is tough to find topics that aren't the same old Black Friday shopping and stuff that whatever we talk about every year.
Hey, not to have the off-air meeting on air, but, we could look into doing some North Dakota history stuff we've been talking about, and maybe listeners can be looking forward to that. It's easier said than done. But
although I should say now, I'm going to be one of the people taking time off. Next week, I'm off all week for the Thanksgiving holiday. I'm going to spend some time with family. But anyway, so what I want to talk about today is obviously Doug Burgum's campaign. And the other stuff, by the way, we're going to talk about the Dakota poll that's out. There were more results out about abortion. There were more results out about the property tax measure, which I think was very interesting. There's kind of a contention around the North Dakota News Cooperative that put out in their memo. They were very much trying to make the point that, the legislature's out of touch with voters or something on some of these issues. I'm not sure I entirely agree. I'm going to push back on that a little bit. We're going to talk about all that in a minute. But before I go, I actually had a reader text me a campaign message from Governor Doug Burgum's campaign. And I've been tough on his campaign. I have been saying, get out. Your polling is not, there's no groundswell for Doug Burgum that's coming. And I've even wondered, and I don't want to believe this is true, that Doug Burgum's getting taken for a ride by consultants who stand to make a lot of money the longer this very, very rich man stays in the race. I don't think Doug Burgum is anybody's dupe, but I think he wants this badly, and I think it may be blinding him a little bit. But some of his campaign messaging has really bothered me, and this has been a common theme throughout Doug Burgum's political career for me. I didn't like in 2016 the way he campaigned. I think a lot of the things, I think campaign trail Doug Burgum is a very different person than in office and governing Doug Burgum. And the difference between the two bothers me. But some of the campaign messaging coming out was about the debate. He claimed, he tweeted out that he skipped the debate. Well, no, he didn't skip the debate any more than I once skipped a date with Britney Spears, right? That didn't happen.
Your metaphor in your column was you never got to play second base for the Yankees.
Yeah, I didn't want to recycle the metaphor.
You took me off guard a little bit, you doing because you've heard that Dennis Leary bit, right? It was we all want to grow up and be baseball stars. Life sucks. Buy a cap.
Right. I think it's buy a helmet, but
buy a helmet. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I didn't want to recycle metaphors, but he didn't skip the debate. He claimed in another campaign pitch that was texted out to people that the debate viewership went down by 2 million viewers or however many millions of viewers because he wasn't on the stage. And the most recent one, and this bothers me too, because I think this is a little icky. Somebody messaged this to me, and it's from the Doug Burgum campaign. And it says, you are cordially invited to join the official Doug Burgum for America Advisory Board. As an official Doug Burgum for America Advisory Board member, you'll receive early access to polls, questionnaires, and petitions. This will allow you to send your correspondence securely and directly to Team Burgum. We're ready to take our campaign all the way to the White House in 2025, and we'll rely on support from our advisory board members to get there. And then it asks you for money. It says, please contribute any amount before midnight tonight to confirm your status as an official Doug Burgum for America advisory board member. Now, what I'm struggling with this, Ben, is on one hand, we could roll our eyes on it because, let's be honest, Doug Burgum and his campaign team are not going to listen to what randos who donated $5 to the campaign are saying. They don't care. This is a come on. It's not.
It's a pitch.
It's not serious.
An email pitch. It's a very specific type of political fundraising.
It's a pitch, and you're not actually going to be on any board that in any meaningful way that is going to have any meaningful impact on this campaign. On the other hand, what bothers me about this is we talk about influence peddling all the time. We know what goes on, right? We've seen it's so cliche. It's just accepted where some big money person who donates a bunch of money to the campaign gets appointed ambassador to somewhere super cushy, right? Some easy posting, or it happens all the time. And here it's just right out in the open where it's like, oh, if you give us money, then you can be on our advisory board and you'll get direct access. You can send us straight information. Now, again, I think we can all roll our eyes. We all know if you donate $10, you're not, Doug's not going to be like, oh, we got an email from an advisory board member. We better sit down and read it right away. That's not going to happen. But I don't know. Am I getting too wound around the axle about this?
And I can hear his response in my head already. Admittedly, it's an assumption because it's the same one he gave, I think, to the giving away gift cards, aka sending you $20 for $1 so he could get on the debate stage, which is, he would say this is his campaign being innovative. It's them trying something new. This is emulating the spin would be emulating the private sector by giving you exclusive, there's exclusive access subscription levels to subscription services now of all sorts. And how are we doing anything any different? What I would say to your question is, one, you're a columnist and a journalist in his home state, and he is running for president. If he doesn't want scrutiny, if he doesn't want critique, then don't run for president. And to be a little fair to him, I haven't heard him complaining about attention. I haven't heard him complain about people talking about him. Anything, he needs more attention on a national scale. He tends to bristle on the question of what are you going to do to beat Donald Trump? But I think there's a real conversation to be had that I think his campaign simply skipped to their detriment about messaging and electronic messaging, both on his social media presence and I'm on his email list too, despite never having donated. I was going to say I believe, but I have not donated ever to his campaigns. But you can just sign up. And when I read them, they are form letter emails, competently enough written, formatted, designed by, it could be anybody in a DC marketing campaign marketing firm or otherwise. It could be for any candidate. And I find that, in addition to what you're saying, because it's not charlatan-y, but it's cheap. It's Carnival Barker-ish. It's not quite snake oil salesman, but you're getting into that territory really quickly. And the thing that just, to me, that sucks about it is, I don't feel like his consultants on the electronic communication side have conveyed his personality or what he would like to bring to the race that is unique to him in any way, shape, or form. And therefore, I think that is part of why people don't get excited about it. Because at the end of the day, like, a fundraising email list is for people who are active in politics and who give to political campaigns. That's the minority of Americans, the minority of voters. Right now, though, you're trying to attract the attention and support, if you're him, of Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, I think Nevada, caucus and primary goers. They are paying attention. They're paying attention to cable news. They're paying attention to their email list. And if you said something compelling or stand out, you could maybe get their attention, maybe. And they're not doing that. And if I'm Doug Burgum, if I'm the CEO of my own campaign, I'm going, why? Why aren't I standing out? Why is this electronic communication look? If you inserted Tim Scott's name and picture, if you inserted Ron DeSantis's name and picture, Nikki Haley's, What's the difference? What's the difference between me and this campaign? What's the difference between me and Mitt Romney 2012? Because that's what the campaign is. It's a nothing.
That's a really well-made point. I am on as you might imagine, I am on a stunning number of campaign lists. And what happens is
Right.
all these campaigns sell their lists to each other. So now I randomly get like fundraising pitches from people running for Delaware's 3rd congressional district or something, right? Like, I don't even know. I don't even know if Delaware.
Snail mail letters from people saying, "I'm running against Lowen Boebert. Won't you contribute to my campaign in Colorado?"
Right. So I have all of this. I have all of these things that are, I get these. So what I'm saying is I see a lot of them, and a lot of this stuff, I haven't seen this particular, like, be an advisory board member. Maybe it's out there. I don't know. But a lot of this stuff, I think your point is right. Like, it's copy and paste. Like, it's, if you've seen one, you've seen a lot of these.
And what I don't understand about that, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, what I don't understand about that is you're a 2-term governor. This is your big chance to make a big splash on the national stage. Therefore, why would you do it? I was going to say so safe, but this isn't even safe, because boring and not getting attention isn't safe. That's losing. Why would you do it in such a way where you don't even make a splash? Why not go out with a bang if you're going to lose? And there's a bad way of doing that. There's the extremist, or just playing to the worst of our angels, or playing to our demons. But, like, why wouldn't you do it in a way that makes a mark? I just it's beyond me.
I think if we could get some of the campaign advisors and maybe the candidate himself in a room and give them truth serum and have them speak candidly to us, they would probably say, well, this is how political money is raised in the year 2023. And you've been, and to me specifically, they'd say, hey, Port, you've been hitting us, pointing out that Doug Burgum, 80% of their campaign. And by the way, this is not for the super PAC. This is for the campaign itself. And they'll say, look, listen, you've been hitting us because 80% of the campaign's cash has come out of the candidate's own wallet, and now you're hitting us for trying to actually find donors. And I don't know. Like,
I push back on that, because money's not what they need right now. They need support in the polls, and specifically in early states. They need a good turnout in early states. And from what I'm seeing on social media, as a compliment, his work ethic has not ebbed. Every time I'm on social media, the best posts he makes by far are great meeting with a lot of people in either Iowa or New Hampshire today. Right. And there are fresh new pictures of him speaking to a teeny tiny crowd in rural or small town. It's not just Des Moines. It's not just, I don't know what cities are in New Hampshire, because I've never been there, in We Like Pancakes, New Hampshire. And there's people there, and they look like they're considering him. They don't look miserable to be listening. And they're not events that are cattle calls for all the candidates either. There's a big Doug Burgum sign there, and they've attracted people there. So I don't know, maybe there's some secret sauce where there's a story that, and who knows how true it is, but I read in 2016 where Trump just did Hail Mary rallies at the tail end of 2016 when everybody just knew that Hillary Clinton was going to win. And one of them was in Michigan, and there were people saying, why are you wasting your time in Michigan? Michigan's gotten blue since whenever. And famously,
then he won Michigan.
Yeah, and famously he flipped it. But there's a story where Trump turned to one of his campaign advisors, staffers, people, because there was a big crowd there rallying and yay-rawing, and he said, this doesn't feel like losing. I don't understand. Like, I know the polls have us down. He was acknowledging, according to this story, who knows? But he was acknowledging, he's like, this crowd's fired up, this crowd's whatever. Like, I understand a crowd isn't the whole state. But I think I could see maybe part of that is what's motivating him from a top-down perspective to keep going. He goes in this crowd of 50 people, as you experienced, Rob, when you were in Iowa with him, are saying, hey, we hadn't heard of you before. Now we're considering you. You're an interesting guy. Life story is compelling. I like that. Whatever. And he's thinking, I can do this enough on national stage. And I've drawn the comparison before, the somewhat tortured metaphor of like the Clinton 92 campaign, where the candidate weaves his way slowly through the early states. But you've made the point, and I think a very correct one, that we are not living in 92. These people are not Bill Clinton, George H. W. Bush.
Also, this is not, this isn't a head-to-head national campaign at this point either. It's a primary campaign, and there's a lot of other candidates.
So was that race in 92.
And listen, I mean, I will say, I get no joy out of writing these things about Doug Burgum, but I think his campaign, for as hard as he works in person, and that's a really good point that you make. For as hard as he works in person, and it's really, really hard, and he really does a good job on the stump. There's no question about it. I don't understand why they're not putting more effort into the digital messaging then, right? I mean, if you're working this hard to craft this very authentic feeling, very issues-focused campaign in person on the campaign trail, well, a lot more people than you will ever meet in person are reading your social media posts, are reading your emails that you're sending out, and they're carnival barker stuff. So why are you doing this? And I mean, we also live in an era where it seems like I was about to say every Republican politician, but let's be honest, there's plenty of Democrats doing this too, are doing a Trump impression, right? I mean, maybe they're not necessarily making the same arguments or saying the same thing, but the tone and the demeanor is the same. I mean, I don't know, the last 48 hours or so in Washington, D.C., we have the former Speaker of the House elbowing somebody in the back. We have a senator in a committee hearing basically standing up and getting ready to fight a union boss.
Or he's literally doing the, like, hold me back thing with the union boss, who was also inviting it, which, by the way, side note on that stupid exchange, it's the senator from Oklahoma and I think the head of the Teamsters. We're in a labor committee.
By the way, neither man behaving well, by the way.
No. I enjoyed that I enjoyed nothing about that. But if I enjoyed something about it, it was that the person known for calming everyone's passions, Bernie Sanders, gaveling everyone down, saying, "Stop it! You're behaving like children."
You're a United States senator, he said. Yeah, Bernie Sanders somehow managed to be the adult in the room on that one.
Bernie Sanders was gaveling down the union head too, not for what his stances were, but for his behavior. I actually want to read this because it was too funny to me. The quote was, "We were there to talk about, and did talk about, and I think it's important, the crisis facing working families in this country, the growing gap between the very rich and everyone else, and the role that unions are playing in improving the standard of living of the American people. We are not there to talk about cage fighting."
Yeah.
And you can say, agree or disagree with that. I would actually go, because this is from the AP story, because our senator gets quoted here. Mitch McConnell was asked about it and said, "It's very difficult to control the behavior of everybody who is in the building. I don't view that as my responsibility." And then Kevin Kramer says, "It's a dynamic place. We don't wear the white wigs anymore." Is the direct quote. He said that no one should be taking it too seriously. And that is something that I think has infected and trickled down. It might be a tortured connection, but maybe it's not, to these Carnival Barker style emails campaigns. Well, I guess we shouldn't take it too seriously. Well, I guess you don't need to do that. I think a candidate could stand out and make a name for themselves saying, "No, I don't personally control someone else's behavior. They're elected and they're responsible to their voters, but we need a higher standard for our elected officials here."
Yeah, I would like to hear more from Senator Kramer about that. I don't like his quip that we don't wear the white wigs anymore, kind of just accepting that this is the way things are. And I think that's maybe getting back, maybe why I feel like I'm making too big of an issue out of some of these emails that Burgum's campaign is sending. I mean, I guess the argument you could say is, well, everybody's doing it. This is just the way politics are done now. And I'm over here trying to say, maybe we shouldn't be doing it this way. Maybe we should.
Not only, well, one, again, I really strongly feel he's worthy of scrutiny. He's running for president. So I don't think there's any need to apologize for that. I guess if you're maybe running every day or running personal, but it's about the campaign, he's running for president. And two and three, I agree with you that we need a higher standard. But three, from a selfish, make your campaign stand out point, don't you want to get outside of the pack? If you enter, let's do the businessman metaphor that, frankly, Republicans love so much. If I'm starting a new business and all I do is say, I've got the same product as my competitors, I offer it at the same price, our service is about the same standard because everybody's doing it. Well, skip you then. Why would I ever patronize your business? What are you doing to stand out? What are you doing to be better? That's what I want to hear from your campaign. And I don't feel like I'm hearing it. I'm the wrong audience for it, admittedly, but I don't see other Republicans hearing it either, because he's still in single digit support nationally and in statewide and in early state polls.
And again, I mean, to the people who are saying, well, this is just how politics is done. Are you happy with the way things are right now? Do you feel like our country's well governed? Do you feel like we're on top of our problems? Like our national credit ratings getting downgraded again. Our life expectancy as Americans is in decline. I mean, are you happy with the way things are going in our country right now?
Our credit ratings getting downgraded. And to your point about Democrats also doing the Trump impression, Democrats, in my opinion, have way, way too much in the past, especially 2 decades, also become anti-establishment, also rans where they say everything in Washington, D.C. is broken. And essentially, it's never going to be fixed. And there's a little bit of like, not with that attitude.
Yeah, I mean, if that's your message to voters, then I think the question from voters is, why should we even vote? And maybe that's the point. Maybe that's why we're seeing people tearing down these institutions, because nobody thinks anything
that's absolutely why
is worth anything anymore. So I mean, all of that stuff bothers me, and it's not Doug Burgum's email about his dumb advisory board thing, which, let's be honest, doesn't actually exist.
But it's a symptom of a disease, and you're pointing out the connection to the overall.
It's a symptom of the larger problem. Like, we should expect maybe getting a better sort of political leadership starts with expecting more from these people, and not just accepting, oh, that's politics, we don't wear the white wigs anymore.
That's not helpful. What are you doing to make it better? And again, I understand you can't go into the committee and start puppeteering the senator from Oklahoma, but you can say that's not how I behave.
How hard is it to say that's not how you comport yourself as a United States senator?
Yeah.
And by the way, that's also not how you comport yourself as the leader of a very influential organized labor organization. Is what I was going to say. It's a little weird. Stop it. You're grown-ups. Behave like it. Anyway, so that stuff all bothers me. Hey, let's talk polls.
New polling data that we're getting in North Dakota from you guys got the interview previously.
That's right. So Brian Lundy is one of the gentlemen who are one of the people who are involved in the North Dakota News Cooperative's polling. They had some polling out on presidential preference. My company, Forum Communications, was the one that we are a partner in that poll, and we also I think that was our question that we asked to pick, and Doug Burgum came. We talked about this previously. Doug Burgum came in third. Or if you want to say a 3-way tie for second, because DeSantis, Haley, and Burgum were all pretty close there.
Yeah. And can I interject really quickly? Yeah. Rob, do you have, I know you're not conducting the poll, but you happen to be connected to a company that's helping fund it. Do you have any idea why Vivek Ramaswamy was not in the poll when he's consistently polling higher than Doug Burgum? I
don't know.
Maybe it was a poll of people who have paid to be on the ballot in North Dakota already, which would be very fair if it's the case.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because that would be that. Well, but except the thing is, I don't think DeSantis is paid yet.
Okay. I would say
Haley has, and Burgum has, and Trump has. I don't know that, and I don't know that. I mean, if it's I don't know. Vivek Ramaswamy should have been in there probably.
Can I make a quick side point just with?
But by the way, I don't think if Vivek's in there, he probably polls from Trump's more than anybody else's.
Definitely, but he should be in the mix. But he's polling higher than Burgum. He's always polled higher than Burgum, actually. In I think probably, and I don't want to speak for them. I think probably what they did is it's Trump's the front runner. Trump, Haley, and DeSantis are the 3 front runners, although the latter 2 are way behind. And then Doug Burgum's actually from North Dakota. So those are the 3 that they asked. I want to make a side point of completely unsolicited advice for the folks who are doing this polling, because I've agreed with you. I think Chad agreed too. We desperately need more public polling, more information about what North Dakotans are thinking. It's part of becoming a more modernized state, just like the push for those who believe in every year session, those who, and we're dealing with the modern economy. We want to know what people are thinking. Like you've made the point, we're a dynamic state. We're a young state. We need to know what we're thinking. We need to be more dexterous. The folks who are doing the polling have got plenty of work in front of them, but if they could include little nuggets like that, I guess, of information, for lack of a better term, like here's why we picked who we picked. I think that is going to help their legitimacy in the eyes across the political spectrum, and it's going to make them that much more influential. And because I want to see them succeed. And I'm not the guy doing the work, so I am the guy on the sideline wagging his finger. But I want this polling. I want legislators to know what their constituents are thinking. And frankly, in their defense, it's not always easy to know what your constituents are thinking. You're going door to door campaigning, but they don't necessarily know how to say immediately at the 30 seconds you have at the door, oh, by the way, I think property taxes should not be a local issue. I think it should be a state issue. And they might be caught off guard. So knowing that and having more polling is great. So I just want them to be viewed as with as much legitimacy as possible.
Yeah, I want to blow up everything you just said. Ramaswamy was in the poll. He just wasn't in the graphic. I'm looking at the crosstabs right now.
Well, everything I just said was wrong.
Ramaswamy was at 2% in our graphic. He was lumped in with the other category.
Ramaswamy's at 2%. All right.
Yeah, that's I'm looking at it right now. Total Ramaswamy.
Never mind.
2%. So
well, then never mind. But we got polling. That's where we're at in the state of North Dakota. And you've talked before. Doug Burgum's not even polling ahead in his home state.
Oh, right. By the way, RFK Jr. is at 3%.
Of the total.
Total, yeah.
What a oof. Yeah. Oof. I'm actually, if he gets on statewide ballots, which that's a task in and of itself, but if he gets on statewide ballots, then I hope he gets more exposure so he can say the things. Because honestly, if you want conspiracy theory, jump off the ledge style, like I think you've already got it with Trump. I don't know why you go to RFK Jr. So the only thing I see looking into a general election, because I think we're at the general election already, is in the 6 states where it might even be close, RFK Jr. polling from the dumb Democrats that just want to be anti-establishment and vote for somebody who's got a last name that they associate with Democrats, for somebody who, frankly, doesn't really agree with much.
RFK is, it's really hard. I mean, at first blush, I want to say that RFK Jr. polls probably mostly from Trump world, but I mean, the thing is, he's a horseshoe candidate. He's kind of where the far right and the far left meet on some of his issues. And I don't know. I don't know how to.
I think you're putting too much thought in it. I'm talking about the people who pay attention in the last 2 weeks of elections go, RFK Jr. Yeah, I like the Kennedys. Biden's too old, and then they'll pull the lever for him, and that's the amount of thought they'll put into it. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
Well, okay. Anyway, so that was the presidential part of this poll. They came out with another iteration. And two of the things they asked is, first of all, how do you feel about North Dakota's new abortion law? And it came out with basically 48% opposed, 45% support. Mm-hmm. There was some pretty, the strongly opposed was at 38, strongly support was at 30. So you saw some more separation there. The North Dakota News Cooperative, and kind of the way this has been reported was, well, this is evidence that the state legislature is out of touch with the electorate. I don't know. I look at those numbers and I see people are pretty divided.
I actually think it's even more out of touch, I can get into it. But
I'm not sure I agree. And again, I would because we like to debate about these poll numbers. There is exactly one survey that really matters when it comes, and that's the vote. Correct. And I will tell you that most of these lawmakers that all the journalists are right now saying are out of touch with voters, most of them are going to get reelected.
Absolutely, they're going to get reelected. I think it's. I have 2 questions about it. One, was the question phrased simply, do you like or don't like?
Do you support or oppose North Dakota's new abortion law? And I think that speaks to part of the problem too. Is
how many of them know what the new abortion law is?
How many of them know what it is? Now, basically,
because I was wondering the same thing. Because I'm wondering, is there someone who's super pro-life, and they hear abortion law and they go, abortion, I'm opposed. And they're part of the 38%.
I don't know about that, but there might be a lot of people who don't know what the law is, because people's views on abortion are a lot more nuanced. Mostly we think of it people who want. We think of it as a debate between people who want abortion to be completely banned and people who want it to be completely legal, all the way up to birth, I guess. And those are two very extreme positions that most Americans don't subscribe to. Most Americans are somewhere in the middle. They want abortion. They want access to abortion to be legal, but not all the way up to
my point there is those who do want it banned, no matter what, they're Mike Pence on the issue, and they'd be happy to associate with that stance. When they hear abortion law, if you don't say abortion ban, and you're getting this from a news organization, I honestly think they're the type of people that would say strongly opposed.
Well, that's okay. And I think that might get into the question of how many of them know what the law is, because what we're talking about is the legislature went in and tweaked a law that had pre-existed, but that suddenly became relevant again because the Supreme Court struck down Dobbs. And I don't
really enhanced restrictions.
And really, it didn't get a lot of attention during the last session. I don't know how many rank and file North Dakota voters even know what the new law is.
If you're a single issue voter or a kind of person who is not overly political but is extremely anti-abortion, and frankly there are plenty of those in North Dakota, that's not an accusation. I think that's accurate. I think they would say that's accurate. A lot of those people say that accurate. When you hear abortion law, you associate that with Roe v. Wade, with funding for Planned Parenthood, funding for whatever. And you're saying that people taking surveys don't do word association? I mean, come on.
I'm saying a lot of people who respond to these surveys aren't probably as informed as they should be about what they're being asked about, and how you ask the question can impact the results very much. But I mean, overall, this idea that the legislature's out of touch, I think, is the North Dakota News Cooperative and some of our reporters, and I mean, I think they're getting a little too cute. I say that as somebody who has been very critical of this legislature. I'm not one to make excuses for them, but I mean, we are very divided, and the abortion issue is so complex, because I think if you ask them specifically, how do you feel about North Dakota's 6-week abortion ban? People might, putting a specific number on it, that might impact the results. I'd be interested in knowing what that is. Although I will say also that one of the values of this poll is that they're going to be doing this poll regularly. And by doing it regularly, we are going to hopefully create a data set over time where we can see ups and downs. And then I think some of these numbers become a lot more valuable.
I think there's another important factor with this abortion question, though, is that by their very nature, every survey and survey takers would admit this too, whoever is answering it is self-selected in the fact that they are willing to answer a survey, a political survey poll, and this is conducted via phone, right?
I think it was a mix of. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, they weren't in person. I think it was over phone. Maybe it was online.
It was an electronic survey, point being.
Right.
So if that being the case, I'm going to say the people opposed to the abortion law were underrepresented based on assumption. But my assumption is I am guessing younger folks in the under 35 demographic that don't vote as much.
I think that's a lot of assumptions, Ben. I think that's
I don't think they take the surveys, but I think in general they would slant more towards being opposed to the law.
Maybe.
What this also says to me is, given how statewide ballot measures have gone in red states regarding this issue, if you're a pro-choice person, if you think that some sort of legalized abortion rights should be in state statute, I don't know why you wouldn't work towards putting
a ballot measure together.
Putting a ballot measure on, because right now, if you're in favor of abortion rights, you're essentially at zero. You have only one place to go, which is up. Right now in South Dakota, they've got the signatures to put this on the ballot next year. I'm wondering, a group does. I'm wondering what happens in North Dakota. I'm wondering what happens in other red states. Now that you have Kansas and Ohio, and I can't remember which other ones as precedent, but some of these ones have voted for Trump by double digits. And so at that point,
but I think,
why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you swing the bat?
Even Trump's position on abortion has been flexible. I mean, you have Trump out there
as much of a position as Trump takes on anything.
Well, right, but you have Trump out there slamming Ron DeSantis for signing an extreme abortion ban into law. I mean, and he's the Republican frontrunner. So we are in some strange times for the abortion issue. But one other
Speaking of ballot initiatives,
one other thing is I do think when you would, because I think that is, again, very much the narrative where it's red states voting in favor of abortion. Well, if you look at what was actually on the ballot, though, the Ohio measure, again, it wasn't a complete legalization of all abortion. The state of Ohio could still pass laws that restrict abortion. I think it sets a viability standard. Well, that's now you're talking about an abortion ban, a 20-week abortion ban.
It divided up, I believe, with different restrictions for trimesters.
Right.
But any of that is a more what's the right word? You have to be so careful using the language around more expansive than a 6-week ban.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay, I'm not arguing. I don't know why
wouldn't you put that on?
I don't know why you're carrying on. I'm not arguing against you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying these pro-life versus pro-choice narratives develop, and I'm saying who constitutes pro-life and who constitutes pro-choice. There are a lot of people who consider themselves to be pro-life who would be just fine with a 15-week abortion ban. Now, there are people who are pro-life who would say, well, that's pro-choice because you want some level of access to be abortion. But it's very hard. How people think of themselves, it's very difficult. This is one poll in the North Dakota, and I think hanging your hat on it and saying the legislature's out of touch with the people, who is in touch with the people on this issue, I'm not sure.
I gotta tell you, most people I grew up around would call a 15-week ban. They would call it that. They would say that's not a ban. Life begins at conception. Abortion should not be legal. Abortion shouldn't happen, and they don't want that in their state. And that's how they're going to vote. And those people.
But those are also the people who spend a lot of time talking publicly about abortion.
Yes.
This is not an issue most people like to bring up in casual conversation, which again makes it very, very hard to measure public opinion about this, because the people that we hear the most from on this issue are the people who are most fired up about it.
You're saying this isn't going to be everyone's favorite topic of conversation coming up with Thanksgiving?
It's not my favorite topic of conversation either, but we have to talk about it because it's important. The other issue is property taxes that got pulled. Or I should say one place where I did think that it was okay to say that the legislature is maybe a little bit out of touch is they put out ballot measure reform. And I really think that this is kind of a dumb proposal. Essentially, it does some other things. It limits ballot measures to a single issue, which I think is a good thing. But it also requires 2 votes of the people. A proposed measure would have to be voted on in June, and then if it passes in June, it would get voted on again in November. And I think that's just kind of dumb. Most people oppose it. In fact, I'm surprised that 36% of people supported it. 46% opposed it. I think the problem when the legislature puts things on the ballot, they throw them out there, and then they do really no organized effort to make an affirmative case for what they're trying to do. And that's why they routinely get their butts kicked. I think that particular ballot measure reform was a little silly, if you want to say that the legislature's out of touch on that.
What's the names on that one? And because I actually don't know who sponsored that.
Yana Murdahl.
Okay, and that passed pretty overwhelmingly, I assume.
Yeah. Well, I'd have to go back and look. I think so.
I'm actually asking too. I couldn't quite remember, but those are well worth discussing. I know now. Speaking of, because I've been studying it, South Dakota has that rule. You can only do a single issue per. So it's interesting in places like that have single issue clauses on ballot measures, because, for instance, legalizing recreational marijuana then has to have a separate piece of legislation for who can dispense it and who can regulate it, because they're so narrowed down on single issues. So we'll run into some of that.
I mean, the problem is it's how do you define issue? I mean, to me, it's like, well, I'm gonna legalize marijuana, and obviously, if I'm gonna do that, then there's all sorts. I also need to provide a mechanism for how we're gonna regulate the lawful commerce of marijuana. To me, that's all one issue. I mean, I don't have a problem.
Who gives out licenses? Which department regulates it?
Yeah, so
I think it's obvious, but you have to put it into statute if you're going to do it.
Right. So I mean, the single issue stuff, but I mean, our legislature was violating our existing single issue requirement, and doing so flagrantly, which is why they just had to hold a recent special session. But the really interesting thing I thought was the results on property taxes. And these results surprised me a little bit because so the question that was asked was, should property taxes remain a matter of local control or be eliminated? And so you have 49% saying it needs to remain a matter of local control, 38% saying it should be eliminated, 13% gave no answer, or were undecided. So I was surprised that it was that high. I thought it was going to be more evenly matched. And then I wrote a column about this because I heard on and there's so many of these kind of mega right-wing podcast thing. I mean, they're everywhere, or they're doing live streams and stuff all the time. It's hard. But somebody flagged for me, Rick Becker, former state lawmaker, who left the Republican Party, challenged Senator John Hoeven last cycle, didn't do very well. He's the chair of the ballot measure committee to eliminate property taxes. And so he was asked, the host of this podcast did some accidental journalism, and he was asked about how many signatures that he collected. And he kind of didn't want to give an answer. He's like, I mean, he was, and by the way, kudos to Rick Becker for being candid. He said he didn't want to share a number because he didn't want to disappoint people, essentially. He didn't want them to feel like, oh, the number should be a lot higher. But he estimated, and it was pretty loosey-goosey because he's saying he has some in hand and he has a lot of volunteers who say they've collected a certain number. And I can tell you, I've heard that a lot in the past, and volunteers lie about how many signatures that they've actually collected. But he estimated that they have about a third of the 45, not necessarily the just over 31,000 they need to make the ballot, but about a third of their 45,000 goal. So that's about 15,000 signatures. And I did some math.
Okay, half of what you need. Yeah.
I did some calculations, and they would, at that pace, they would not be able to make the June ballot, which, by the way, I think the June ballot is probably better for them in terms of getting this thing passed.
Which, by the way, I thought we banned that. I thought you couldn't do statewide ballot initiatives on June ballots anymore. I thought that had to be a November thing now.
Nope.
That was a big push from Al Carlson that I actually agreed with, and I thought he got that passed.
He did not.
It shows my naivete or my ignorance. But
nope, it's still there. When the legislature puts it on the ballot, it's always November. But initiated measures can still be in June.
Going for, but
so they would fall well short of the signature requirement by Feb, because they would need to turn them in February at some point to make it. They would have enough to make it in for the November ballot, because they'd have to turn those in I think June sometime. And
I think the November ballot's the better ballot for them.
I think you're wrong. I think it's June. But
I think people who turn out in June are a little bit better. They're more attached to the news. They're a little more dedicated to voting, and they'll read what the actual consequences are. I think the November ballot, especially a presidential ballot, is great for them, because the kind of people that only vote once every 4 years and pay attention 2 weeks before the election see, hey, my property taxes are too damn high. Bunch of politicians.
Maybe. Okay, you're persuading me a little bit. That could be the true case. In either case, I think it's moot. I don't think they're gonna at the pace they're going. If we're taking Becker's number at face value, they're not going to make the June ballot. And I say that because I did the math. They're on from the day it could first be circulated till the day about a week or so ago that he gave that interview. They were averaging about 112 signatures a day, but that rate's going to go down because they're coming into winter months. So there's going to be, it's tough to collect signatures in North Dakota in the winter because you have to go, all the events are indoors. And you can't, most venues.
There are places where you can get away with it, but it's
most
hard.
venues do not want petition circulators in there. Some places will, but I mean, what I'm saying is your ability to get access to events where people are gathering is going to be greatly diminished. And also, I mean, if you're relying on volunteers, how many of them are going to want to stand outside, in the freezing cold, or go door to door in the freezing cold in December, January, February to get those signatures out? So that rate is going to come down. Also, as with most ballot measures, there's a lot of low hanging fruit. Like there's right away you get a surge of signatures because a lot of people are just super excited about it. They hear about it, they're exuberant about it, they want to sign right away. But the thing is, everybody can only sign once, and once you've kind of picked all those people who are super excited about it, now you got to start persuading people, and it gets tougher.
I might be talking on my keister here, and I don't know how different that is than usual, but I'm flabbergasted that, to me, this pitch is like run a free ice cream cone stand in the middle of a desert. Like, I would think the ability to grab signatures, given the things that people have given more than 45,000 or 30,000 rather signatures to in the past, and how fed up people are, the fact that we're pretty evenly divided in this poll on property taxes. I'm confused. I'm confused they're having any trouble getting these signatures. Is this? I think this to kind of throw Becker and his organization on the bus a little more. I think this speaks to a lack of organization on their part. I really don't think it takes that much to get this on the ballot.
If you listen to that podcast interview, he literally talks about, well, we don't have an organization. And I'm telling you, that spells trouble. Like, if you look at how many ballot measures have been kept off the ballot because there was an error in the circulation. Like if you, like, for instance, like you didn't circulate it with like the signature page with the measure. Like, it has to be, like, by law, it has to be circulated as one, so people understand when I'm signing this, I know what I'm signing for. They're not. Otherwise, you have them signing a blank check, basically.
But look at term limits. Like, it basically organized itself.
Term limits, but term limits paid for petitioners. Term limits paid for petitioners a lot, and that's why a lot of the ones that, just about all of the measures that are making the ballot anymore are people who are paying petitioners, which is just reality. And Becker has said, been adamant they're going to rely on volunteers, and that may do them in. I mean, as much as I don't like paying petitioners, that may do them in. Also, I think what's hurting this is that Rick Becker is not a popular political figure. I think leaving the Republican Party and running against John Hoeven, and that was a disaster. He did very, very poorly in the election.
I couldn't agree with you more at a Republican convention, at a Republican primary. I will say, I'm looking at it from my Fargo perspective now, but I know where the signature gatherers gather. If you're in downtown Fargo by where the old King House was, and you see somebody wearing a windbreaker and jeans with a clipboard, and they say, "You want to sign this thing about property taxes?" That person walking around downtown Fargo doesn't really think about Rick Becker one way or another. Same in Grand Forks. It's not. It's the old Casablanca line where Peter Lorre says, "You despise me, don't you, Rick?" To Humphrey Bogart, and he says, "I don't know if I ever gave you any thought. I probably would." Yeah. And I don't think people give him any thought. I think they hear property taxes.
But I mean, yes and no. I think enough people know who Rick Becker is, where he's not helping the cause. Let's put it that way. I don't know that he's the right spokesperson for this.
I agree. I'd agree.
Versus
if you had Ed Schaefer as a figurehead.
Especially if you look at, eventually, if this does get on the ballot, and I have my doubts that it is, maybe it will.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be very tough for them. It's going to be very close. If it does make it on the ballot, now it becomes a debate, a matter of public debate. And the thing is Rick Becker is going to be leading that debate against a lot of people who are school board members. I don't know. I don't really know the coalition, but I can kind of imagine who the coalition is going to be. It's going to be a lot of elected city leaders.
Doug Burgum's adamantly opposed to it.
Right.
And publicly.
But not just Doug Burgum. You're going to have school teachers. You're going to have principals. You're going to have superintendents. You're going to have, park district people. You're going to have a lot of people that probably have a lot of respect in their communities. And they're going to be coming out against this. So, and now, what this poll tells us, if we take this poll at face value, they're not starting with the wind at their backs, which for as angry as North Dakotans are perpetually about their property taxes, and you can count me in among them. I'm seeing the increase every year. And when I talk to, I was talking to a local official about my property, and he was kind of defensive about it. And it wasn't a local official that I live in there. It was a local official from another community, not mine, not where I live. But I was talking about it, and they're like, "Well, Rob, your property taxes probably went up because the value of your home went up." And I'm like, "Do you understand how kind of arrogant it is for you to say that to me? Like, okay, so the value of my home went up. My property taxes now cost me."
It's not the point.
Do you think I make more money because the value. Should I sell my home now? I mean, should I take out another mortgage on that new value to pay my property tax?
And by the way, as a take it as a compliment or don't take it as an insult. You're a person earning money right now because you're in the career phase of your life. For a retiree who's on a fixed income, wow, thanks. Sucks. I get to pay more and I don't get anything.
I get to pay more. I get nothing more for it. Nobody realizes the value in their home until they sell it. And who knows if they can actually sell it for what the property tax assessor says it's worth.
And we have a lot of people in North Dakota, something we should be proud of because it's kept our housing market stable, who saved up, script and saved to put their 20% down. They got there after 2 or 3 houses, maybe over their lifetime. They're in their forever home. This is the place that they want to spend the rest of their life. So you know what? The resale value is great for the kids, great for somebody in the family, inheriting whatever. That's great. But they are not going to see that, but they will see that property tax bill every year. And they're seeing it go up every year.
Yeah. So I was surprised. Their signature collection, again, based on what Becker's telling us, and if anything, he's probably inflating the numbers. Man. I don't think he would be understating them, but their signature collection efforts are not going as well as probably they had hoped. And according to public opinion, they're going to have a tough argument because you're already at 49% of people who are opposed to this. Now, that being said, and we'll close out with this. What I'm really afraid of is I'm afraid local officials are going to look at this, and if the property tax measure gets defeated again, or it doesn't make the ballot, or they're going to look at polls like this, there's going to be a lot of local leaders out there who say, oh, everything must be fine with property taxes. Let's just keep doing what we're doing.
I really hope legislators take a humility check.
Not legislators. The legislature has done enough on this issue. The legislature can't fix this issue. We need to stop talking about the legislature in the context of property taxes. It's not a statewide problem.
I understand what you're saying in terms of maybe actual bills or buy downs, but they need to be part of the education and they need to be part of the conversation. They can't just go to Bismarck and then go home and not show up to the school boards or be in touch with their cities. And many of them are, but I don't know. I hope they become.
Oh, of course they need to be in touch, but their message.
I guess what I'm getting at is if this were to pass, their lives would become nightmares because a lot of our lives would become nightmares because every property tax.
If this passes, we have to have a full-time legislature. I don't know how in the hell we're gonna make budget decisions for every school board and park district and county and city in the state.
It won't work. Doesn't work.
I don't know how you're going to do it.
Or school boards and cities will just break the law in a way that's not egregious appearing, and we'll all just sort of accept it for a while until a court hearing comes down. Kind of like omnibus.
There is a push, and I shouldn't have brought this up right at the end of the show, but there's a push to try to use sales taxes, like where we would drop. What I'm hearing about this plan that we may see in 2025, if assuming Becker's measure doesn't pass, is that they would drop the state sales tax by a point and then give that point to locals so that they can use that sales tax to raise money for schools, et cetera, et cetera. But when they're describing this to me, I'm like, okay, well then what stops all the local governments from just gobbling up that additional revenue and doing nothing on that's just another buy down
with sales, with a consumption that's a harebrained.
I don't think. Well, listen, other states do it. I don't think there's anything wrong with the consumption tax per se. My worry is you're giving them another revenue stream, and you're not requiring them to do anything to lower property tax burdens.
For God's sakes, please don't open more avenues to do exactly what you're saying. The thing you've already been doing. That's right. That might be the worst solution I've ever heard. That's amazing.
Either North Dakota voters start. I mean, we talk about local control all we want, and we want it. Either we start expecting local accountability with the local control, or we're going to end up losing the local control because the only other solution is for the state to take this over, and I don't want that. So I hope locals aren't looking at some of this polling and thinking, oh, there's no problem. Anyway, we got to go. Like I said, next week I am going to be off. We're going to have another show coming up on Friday. Matt Lewis, who is the author, he writes for the Daily Beast. He's written for all sorts of things. He's got a new book out called Filthy Rich Politicians, about how many politicians get rich while in office, working on public salaries. Funny how
how did I miss on that?
Anyway, so Matt Lewis is going to be on the show Friday. We'll be talking about that with Oban and I. And then I will be off. There'll be no podcasts, no new columns or anything from me during the holiday week. I'm taking the whole week off. And then after that, I'll be back and we'll talk about stuff then. So thank you for listening as always, and we'll talk again. Did you know Forum Communications Company has a robust podcast library? At inforum.com/podcasts, we have everything from politics, sports, true crime, outdoor adventure, and more. Visit inforum.com/podcasts and explore them all today.